Hi, once again I'm Sydney and I am a servant of the Almighty God. Today I want to start I'm starting a new podcast, World Unity, based on inspirations that I have written about in my newest book, my latest book, well, as of this date being November 2024. This newest book is inspired by recognizing that intelligence does not flow from randomness. And so us as human beings, we are logical, we are intelligent. And so when we look around, we see intelligence in everything really. And so it seems natural to us, right? But as I dive into basically this thesis, which I think it may be that it's way ahead of its time, but as I go into this, from whence cometh intelligence? Okay, in this book, I will basically show that what we recognize in plants, in animals around us, it's basically intelligence. When you look at a plant turning towards light, or you look at the behavior of all animals around us, what we call instinct basically is intelligence. And we have been taught that in all of this is a product of random happenstance. And with a lot of people, they say, well, it's just natural. And again, that's kind of like, to me, for those who really question things, it's the same as when we said the earth was flat. Oh, it's just natural, the earth is flat. Everybody understands that. Or the earth being the center of the universe and everything goes around the earth. And it takes a while. But we have gotten to the point where we are now building intelligence. We now understand that intelligence is based on logic. You have to make decisions, and when these decisions make sense or are logical to us, that shows intelligence. The ability to memorize and make comparisons and all of these things, right? It, again, to us, it just seems natural. And so for most of us right now, we just say, oh, that's just natural. But if you think about the premise of all of this occurring spontaneously, randomly, just happening, then when we look at the intelligence, and I try to stay away from human intelligence, because then it gets into learning and all of this stuff. That is not what I'm referring to. I like to refer to the intrinsic intelligence, what we observe in plants, what we observe in spiders, in snakes. We see intelligence. And I have lots of examples. If you look at the corolla spider, you look at, again, the behavior of fish. And I have so many examples in this podcast. And I will, in future podcasts, I will be bringing more examples. But what we see is intelligence. And now that we are actually building intelligence, and I say this, and I truly believe this. My life from being born in a small village, having a career that's mapped out, working in oil refining and getting into, that sort of engineering, chemical engineering and civil engineering, like I started training with, to move into software design and software engineering, recognizing what it takes to build intelligence, and being someone who is touched with this spiritual seeking of knowledge, recognizing truth, logic, and also recognizing that there are some things that we can't, and because we can't explain them currently does not mean that they don't exist. It's like, I always use that analogy, right? In the 60s, if we said, you can stand there on a phone and have a video call with somebody on the other side of the planet, people would think, well, what were you smoking? And they'd be like, hey, man, can I get some of that? But this is what happens as things are revealed. We question engineers, we question what we observe, and we don't just accept it's natural. Because that's just a big, it's like a black box. It's like you see this car going, and it's natural for a car to drive autonomously, right? Oh, it's just natural. No, we have to go, and on this side, we go in and we say, oh no, we have to use certain chips because they have to have the ability to store all this information and to process it. We see the same thing in a spider, in a fly, in a plant. We see that intelligence, and this is why even in my book I recommend people look at In the Mind of Plants. We recognize there is intelligence, and that intelligence cannot, right, have anyone try to explain how intelligence happens spontaneously. You see, and they can't face that. They say, oh, it's just natural. No, intelligence cannot occur spontaneously. It's like you park your car outside, and next morning the car wakes you up and sends something to your phone and says, hey, I'm ready to go, I'll take you to work, I'll park myself, I'll do all this stuff. Intelligence cannot occur spontaneously. Intelligence has to be designed and built. And this is what the inspiration that I have been blessed with. And this is why I think this podcast I'll be carrying on in both this world unity, because what this nature does, it unifies all of us. We do not debate chemistry. We do not debate physics. We do not debate these things. Yes, there are some pseudo-scientific, the psychiatry, psychology where, there is no empirical data. But the physics, the chemistry, the biology that we are getting into, we don't debate that. We observe it, and key there is we observe it. And then we decipher, we go in, like I say, we would still be in the dark if we didn't investigate lightning. We understand. So now even plate tectonics, now we are doing similar to what the plants are doing. We can extract energy from the light, right? And store it and use it. All of these things are because we investigate. We didn't just say, oh, that's just natural and leave it like that. Intelligence cannot occur spontaneously. We know now that intelligence requires memory. So when we see a plant and doing things, we know, no, there has to be some processing. And to make logical decisions, to make, which again, to us seems natural, we must make comparisons, right? Like a plant has to know that there is light. Well, that means it has to compare where is more light, less light, and turn, and then the action of turning. See, there's a lot that's involved there. That's intelligence, the decision making. And I know people say a problem with this. Yes, it is. Once you say, if this, do this, else do something else, that's a decision point, right? If it's this, do this, else do something else. And I go into the book, pick up a copy, right? I go into the design of sensors, right? Because before we do intelligence, we must have sensors, right? Again, this is the path that he has guided me on to do robotics and understand all of this stuff. So I've condensed it so that we recognize. And I do pose the question, from whence cometh intelligence? Fact, we must accept that intelligence cannot occur spontaneously. If we understand what intelligence is, if we don't, we just say, oh, that's natural. But if you take the time to understand, and I go into it, intelligence requires logic. It has to do with making decisions. So you have to make a decision, perform some action, and continuously be making decisions. With anything that has to show some sort of intelligence, you need sensors, right? You need light sensors, like a car going down the road. Think about this. It has to know about, the GPS sensors, and then take action based on what it's getting from those sensors. That is what intelligence is about. when we see intelligence demonstrated, you need sensors. And again, I go into all of that in the book based on these inspirations. So I do pose the question, from whence does it come at this intelligence? And so I, as a believer in the Almighty God, believes, but you can come to your own decisions. Just pick up a copy of the book, From Whence Cometh Intelligence, and I delve into the intelligence that we can recognize. A bird building a nest. I'm talking about intrinsic, not the learned intelligence, not things that we learn, the ones that things are born with, that no one teaches them. Right? So when I was saying, well, we learn. No, it's not about, us making fire and finding out. No, it's a child is not born with that. That is taught. We're talking about, and that's why I like to stay away from the human experience, because within the human experience, I am now looking into who we are as individuals. What makes us different, right? Is that something that's is it like an intelligence that makes us, gives us personality? Like a child is born, you realize this child is just like this. There is something there. But I'm not going into that in this. What I'm talking about, it's better expressed when we look at spiders, flies, the lower animals. We look at plants, and then we see. So it's totally what we call instinct. So whenever someone talks about learning, say, no, it's not that. It's the instinct. What programmed the instinct so that, and where I even invest, I even postulate some things about that, because it's passed down. This is the one that's passed down like DNA. Like DNA, it's passed down. That intelligence is there, because a spider does not have to look at another spider to learn these things. It's there. A bird does not have to look at another bird, or go to school to learn how to build a nest. This is the intelligence of making decisions. When you look at a weaver bird, the ability to build that nest, it knows that. That intelligence has to be programmed and stored somewhere, right? Because something as simple as recognizing a building, if we took one of these unattached or undiscovered tribes and you bring them into a city, that would be consternation. Planes going by, all of it would be consternation. We have to learn these things. But the ability, for instance, to build one of these, it's incredible what it takes, but a bird does. And this is the intelligence that it knows the type of material it needs. It knows the process, knows knowledge. This is what this is about. Recognizing that knowledge had to be, just as we program our cars and we program our phones, but it's the ones that take action, right? The ones that take action need sensors. This is why, autonomous driving isn't there yet, because we need to get all the sensors and they all need to be coordinated, and all these things have to be processed, concurrently. So you need that real-time processing in order to make intelligent decisions, so that we don't crash into things and run past a school bus and run over people. That's the sort of thing. It's the same thing we're doing with drones. Well, what we are observing, and we have always observed, but we took it as natural, and people say it's just natural, right? And it says the same thing. We'd be in the dark if we just said, well, lightning is just natural, and we didn't investigate. Because yes, that's the big picture, but as engineers, and I understand not everyone is, people are not concerned with that, but there are some people who will understand, no, we have to get in. And when it comes to intelligence, because we are now doing it, we recognize what it takes to design an intelligent system, and we can observe it. When we look at a spider, we look at a bird, we look at these things, we say, wow, where did that intelligence come from? Because it just could not spontaneously appear. So this will be on the podcast, and I'll be exploring a lot more with this, because what it does, it brings us back, it really does bring us back to recognizing nature, which works for all of us. Right? Religion may divide us, but I think that's misguided. it's misguided because everyone takes my religion, or even worse, my pastor, my rabbi, my cleric, right? And I'm, what, not even within religion. But nature, knowledge shows us there is a unifying. Even though, there is diversity, there is something that holds all of us together: intelligence. The intelligence that enables the entire ecosystem. When we look at the structure of plankton, and you'll have trillions, and then as you go up you have less and less. We look at there's a balance. All of that shows intelligence, right? We look at animals that prey on others, right? Predator animals. They don't capture 100% because that would lead to extinction. And you see, so all of these things, but then people say that's just natural. And so let's set it aside because there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack there. But let's look at the basic instinct, what we call instinct, the intelligence that we can observe, like I said, in a spider, in a bird, and ask ourselves, could that occur spontaneously? So, the whole theory of, one cell, multiple cells slowly developing, and I go into a lot of, all of this in the book. So pick up a copy of From Whence Cometh Intelligence, because the idea that, as things develop, and we see it must happen simultaneously. You have the development, the evolution of the physical animal, but we also see the development of a synchronous intelligence. The intelligence of a spider is not the same as a worm or a fly, or even within the spiders subspecies. They have different intelligence because, when we talk about like a corolla spider that lives in a hole and understands, knows how to use, quartz crystals. That is different from one, or even spiders that prey on animals, like the Portia spider. They all have different, discrete, very, very distinct intelligence. So as we see this evolution, we also recognize, and again I go into it in the book, we see this very distinct development of a discrete intelligence that is imparted. This is not learned. This is not the human thing that I went to school and I learned this and look at how we build fire and we wanted to stay warm. No, it's something that we are born with, like our immune system, right? In human beings, whenever we talk about human beings, I say, no, let's talk about the immune system. Let's talk about the digestive system, because we don't control that. There is intelligence there. The immune system is able to recognize what's foreign, right? And we know that yes, it can go overboard in certain instances, but there's a question there. Is it triggered by something else? Our digestive system, right? Because one thing is that, I look at some of these horrible, crime scene things, and they talk about, they can tell when someone dies because the digestive system stops. And you're like, okay, if this is a lot of if it's a chemical reaction, why does it stop? So there's something that says, oh, this what should be a chemical reaction, because you have all these enzymes, they're just chemicals that react on certain things and break them down and other ones. But when you have that physical death, you're like, oh, all of this thing just stops. So the digestive system, and again, our immune system, which we are discovering more and more about, all of these things, we do not. And you see the intelligence, we have to recognize that. Because again, we are logical, we have been born with these gifts, and so it just seems natural. And that's okay for most people to just say it's natural. But as engineers, we recognize there is more. Just like we recognize, the periodic table. And so you don't just have, the ability turn, lead into gold and all that type of stuff, because we recognize this discrete and the forces that hold, the various atoms in place. And so when you have chemical reactions based on, whether it's ionic or covalent or whatever, bonds that you have within the different chemicals. So we investigate this. We even look down to the very subparticles within an atom. We keep investigating. We don't just say it's natural and just leave it there, because then we'd still be in that age of, well, somehow we could magically turn lead into gold, right? It's the same thing with with living things, right? We see the parallels of intelligence, but we say, oh, it's just natural. No, it's just natural. That just occurs spontaneously. You say, can this logical thing occur spontaneously in every different species get a different version? It occurred spontaneously, or out of this spider, all of these different species get a discrete that matches their physical form. So you see, it starts making sense. That no, that sort of spontaneity cannot just be, prevalent everywhere. Where there's an intelligence that matches the physical form. It's very, very specific. And again, this is what we can see as instinct, but even the internals, like I talk about the digestive systems and all of these things, right? The way a spider digests is different from maybe a snake, or because some things digest things outside the body, and all of these things. The use of venom, the use of coloration, and I go into all of these things in the book. Okay, again, pick up a copy. It's From Whence Cometh Intelligence, right? From Whence Cometh Intelligence. We start looking beyond just nature somehow magically, out of randomness, spontaneously developed, very discrete, powerful intelligence, better than what we're doing now, because a spider doesn't run into some place where it isn't supposed to be. Everything is so tightly coupled, the physical form and this intelligence that matches it. And like I said, it may be that this whole thing is way ahead of its time, but he gave us this ability to record it, so that for posterity we can recognize, yes, there is, we, as servants of the Almighty God, recognize His intelligence. And like the book asks the question, some will say maybe it's some alien beings, but whomever, right, they had to couple the physical form and the relevant, discrete, very, very advanced intelligence, so that things can continue the evolution can continue on the path that we are today. So this is not denying, and going into, no. As I go into the book, when you build fully autonomous things, you give them the ability. And if you have the foresight to see that this can happen and this can happen, then you build that in. So as they evolve, it's in that whole, as part of an ecosystem. And you even have extinction, because things progress to a point where, and I go into this in the book, where you can have all these things happening to DNA all the time as a result of external output. This is what Charles Darwin saw. As a result of external stuff, that programming, that autonomous programming says, let's try this, and you have mutations. So again, take a look at this, pick up a copy of From Whence Cometh Intelligence, and keep following the podcast. In time, we don't know where this will lead, but it can lead to that world unity, where we recognize that the intent is that we observe and we learn from nature. That brings us all together. In spite of our diversity, we recognize the commonalities that are so much greater and will lead us to what we really can be. The true apex of our civilization and our development is recognizing that we are all part of this world unity, designed intelligence. Thank you again for taking the time, and recognize that this is not just a coincidence that you encountered this. There is a purpose, there is a design, and it's quite a series of actions that you've taken that have led you to this information. Again, pick up a copy of the book, and as with everything else, until next time, may God bless all of us and keep us seeking enlightenment. Once again, I am Sydney, a servant of the Almighty God, and thank you.